how are we going to use any shifting in any parts of this? Okay. All right. So on this, because the stretch factors, you're not going to be able to tell unless I gave you points. I'll provide you with the stretching factor. So this, you know, is y equals. Now, the only thing that you have to decide here, is this going to be a positive 17 over 10 or a negative 17 over 10? Based on the direction of your graph, it is a positive. Okay? And then I know it's going to be the tangent of something. And then I can also tell my vertical shift, which is got shifted up 3. So right now, just by looking at that, not having to do any other work, okay, I have this information. Right. The next step is I want to figure out, again, this is the form pi plus or minus something potentially. Okay, and I need to know what my b value is, my coefficient in front of this x. Oops, that wasn't supposed to be pi, that's supposed to be x. Okay, so what is my coefficient in x? Well, if I look at the distance from my asymptotes here, okay, what is the period of this function? So from 3/4 to 5/4 is 2/4, which is 1/2. Okay, so I know that the number that goes in front here, now remember, my period is 1/2, but what number goes here? Do I put the period here or do I put b? B goes here, right? Some of you had the same question when we were doing sine and cosine graphs. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to take the calculation for period is pi divided by b, absolute value of b, and we know that has to equal 1/2. And so what number is going to go in front? Well, if we calculate and solve for b here, multiply both sides by b to get it out of the denominator, and then multiply both sides by 2 to get this 2 out. We've left our b is equal to 2 times pi, and so that's the number that goes out in front, right? Does everybody see that we were calculating for b and then plugging that back into our generic function? And so the last thing that we need to do is we need to figure out was this shifted? Right? And so what we want to do is imagine extending this back. We have to go back and see where this would be located with respect to, would this point fall, or like where from this point would it fall from our original point? Well, our original point was 0, right? And so what shift does this reflect if we move to the right 1? X minus 1, right? So our point started at the origin. We shifted it 1 to the right. We shifted it up 3. And so this right here would be the equation that we would use for this function. Okay. All right, so the first thing is I have y equals, or actually in this case, for that one too, make sure you use the correct function notation. It might change. It might be f, g, or h, so read it carefully. So this one says use g of x is equal to, okay, the stretching factor is 9/10. Now, with the direction of this graph, is it going to be positive or negative? So I need to put a negative in front, right? So that's the first thing that you need to identify. The tan of, I'm going to leave a space for everything that happens inside my function, and this point got shifted where? The y-axis, each line is 1 unit, so it got shifted down 1 unit, right? So a -1 on the outside. Okay, so that's what I can just tell just quickly looking at this. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find what my total period is. So the period of my tangent graph is the distance between any two consecutive asymptotes. So what is the distance from 5 pi over 18 to 7 pi over 18? So when you're looking at those, you have 2 pi over 18, okay, or pi over 9 for your total period. Okay, and so once you know that that period is 2 pi over 9, you can set it equal to the calculation. So 2 pi over 9 is equal to pi divided by the absolute value of b. Yes. Oh, 2 pi over 18. Sorry, 1 pi over 9. Thank you. Okay, so the period winds up being pi over 9. And so if we set that equal to pi over the absolute value of b, then what does that mean our b value is? Multiply by b to get it out of the denominator. Multiply by 9 to get 9 out of the denominator. Divide by pi to cancel. And so we get our b value to be 9. So that's what our multiplier in front of the x is going to be. So notice we put it in front of our horizontal shifting. Okay, so it's x minus whatever our shift was. And when we look at this, we had a shift of pi over 3. And so we simply plug that in right here, and that gives us the function that we're using for our graph.